And I'm not loving it to the point where I was like, what's the point of reading it? What is the point of reading it? That's the point I've got to. Because in part 1, I was like, what the hell is going on? Whereas in part 2, it's like all starting to click. And I really don't want to finish this book, but then at the same time I do. It's finally time, everyone. I will be reading Alchemised by Senlin Yu. And I am so excited for this because I have just heard so many fantastic things about the fan fiction. And obviously because of copyright issues, this author can't publish the fan fiction as a novel, but I'm super excited because I feel like this is still going to be similar to the fan fiction, which I actually haven't read the fan fiction either, but I've just heard so many fantastic things about Alchemised that has made me so hyped to pick this book up. And I want to read this book as quickly as possible, so then when everyone starts coming out with spoilery content and videos, I'm not somehow spoiled by it. So I'm going to try and read this book as quick as possible, but it might take me a while because this is a 1,000 page book. But we're just going to have to wait and see. So as I said, I'm so excited to read this book, but all I know about it is we're following a character called Helena and she's got amnesia. Like, that's all I know. And there's a war going on. They're the 3 things I know about this book, and that it used to be Dramini fan fiction. So I'm super excited to see what all the hype is about, and hopefully I love it to bits. But I think I'm just going to quickly wrap up the intro here because I'm so excited to dive into this book and I don't feel like we need a really long intro to explain what I'm doing. So now it's time for me to start reading Alchemised by Senlin Yu. Okay, so I'm in the middle of editing my vlog and you can see that right there. And I just wanted to quickly say, I forgot to say this in the introduction, which is really important, but this video is going to be non-spoilery, so I've done my best to make sure I haven't spoiled any of the book for you all. So I just wanted to let you guys know before I get into the video. Okay, so I wanted to give an update because I've made progress into Alchemised by Senlin Yu. I'm up to page 103, which is chapter 7. And so far what I've learned about this book is it's set in this world where there was this war that was going on, and we are following a character called Helena who was on the losing side, and she has become a prisoner of war because of this, but she has lost all of her memories from the resistance and the war and what has happened. I think it's like the last 19 months she's forgotten. So the other side is trying to figure out whether or not she has got like these really important memories about the resistance, if she's important, or whether or not she's just another insignificant person who didn't really play a role in it. So because she's got no memory, she is sent to the High Reverie. I don't think I'm saying that right, but we're just going to go with it. So she's sent to him, who is called Cain Farron, and it is his role to try and figure out what Helena is hiding within her memories. But it's proving to be really difficult, and so far this book is really dark. Like, the torture she is going through is actually so sad and horrific. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, it's some really gruesome and messed up things that is happening to her. So I think that's all I'm really going to say about the plot so far, because that's literally all I know. Like, all we've really got is, I feel like, lots of world building. I don't know if it's necessarily feeling like it's info dumpy so far, but I just feel like maybe because it's also in a 1,000-page book that not much has happened, because this is literally only the first 10% of this book I've read. And I need to try and remind myself that if I was this far into another book, not much would have happened anyway. But the thing that really made this book better for me, and I started to enjoy it a whole lot more, was when Helena became a captive of Cain Farron, because I think he's meant to be Draco and obviously Helena is Hermione. But I'm really trying not to do this because I know this was Harry Potter fan fiction, I'm trying to see like what the threads are and how it relates to Harry Potter, but I'm really, really trying not to do that. But it's turning out to be a whole lot harder than I wanted it to. So part of me wishes that when I went into this book, I wasn't knowing that it was a Harry Potter fan fiction, because then I would feel like it'd be a bit easier for me to really get into from the get-go. And it's hard to give you guys an update, like a proper one, because literally she's just been tortured and they're trying to get her memories, but I feel like it's going to pick up now because we're starting to see these characters interact, meaning Helena and Farron. Like, I'm really enjoying their interactions because they're on the complete opposite sides of the war, so it's really interesting seeing how them two interact with one another, and like how she hates him so much because of what he represents, and then how he's got the role of trying to figure out what's going on in her memories. So I'm just going to stop this update here because I don't feel like I've got lots to say yet, because the plot hasn't really picked up. The characters, I don't feel like I know that well yet because we've just been introduced to them. And it's just, I feel like I'm also struggling because she doesn't remember things. I feel like it's hard to understand what's going on effectively because she is also confused, but then it's like there's certain elements where she's not confused. Like, so that's where you're getting the world building, so that's super interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna talk to you guys once I've made some more progress into Alchemised, and it might be when I get up to the 200 page mark, unless I've got something to say before then. Okay, so I'm now up to part 2 of Alchemised, which is page 281, and I wanted to give you guys all an update because it's now, I'm on part 2, so it felt like the perfect opportunity to sit down and tell you guys my thoughts so far. So far, I'm actually really struggling with this book. Like, really, really struggling, which is so disappointing because I know how beloved this author's original work was with the fan fiction. And I just was expecting so much with her new work that's based off Manacled. But obviously, due to copyright issues, it's had to change and become its own original work. So I've got a few issues with this book to begin with. So my first issue is with just the main character's amnesia. You find out she's got amnesia from page 1, so it's not a spoiler, but it has made me really struggle with this book because we're just following this character who doesn't remember the past, I think it's like 19 months of her life, and she's captured by the other side, and we're literally just reading about her being tortured for 268 pages. It is just heartbreaking, so upsetting, and it's like she's being tortured, but then we get all this world building, which is really getting on my nerves because I saw a TikTok where it was like she's being tortured, but then yet she's saying everything about the world, and it's just like, it's so true. And I feel like Senlin Yu has just info dumped to the max. And with books, when there's like lots of world building in this way where it just feels like it's info dumpy, I really, really struggle. I don't feel like my comprehension with stories is fantastic. And I feel like with this book, it's really coming out with like how badly it impacts me because I don't picture things when I read. So I've always really struggled as a reader when I get like big descriptive passages about the world or the necromancy and alchemy. But basically when I get like new concepts explained to me, when authors give me like pages and pages and pages of information, I just feel like it's really difficult for me to take it all in, which I feel like is happening with this book because she's info dumping so hard. And it's honestly making me feel stupid reading this book because it's like I don't get all the terms. I'm just so confused for most of it. And it's like, I'm confused with the world building. I'm not confused with what's happening to the main character because it's like blatantly obvious what's happening to her. But it's also then, as I said, I'm confused, but then I'm also struggling because she's got amnesia. She doesn't really understand what's happened to her in the past. And that's fine, but it's making it hard for me to get attached to her as a character because I feel like we're missing the whole first portion of this book, which obviously we're going to get now in part 2 because there's a flashback, which again is not a spoiler because like I knew that before going into this book and I feel like so many other people do, and sorry if it is, but we're now going back to the past and we're finding out what's happened to her as a character. And I feel like because I didn't get that context at the beginning of this book, when I was reading the first 280 pages, I was like, this is so sad. But also at the same time, I feel like such a horrible person saying this. I didn't care. I did not care. No, that's a lie. I cared what was happening to her. And I felt like this is heartbreaking and so sad. But it didn't hit my emotions like the way it could have if I had have had this context about the life and the relationships between these characters beforehand. And it's just, I'm really, really, really struggling with it. And I'm so sad, so annoyed, so frustrated that this is the case. I just feel like the timeline of this novel is not working for me. Because as I said, I'm not attached to these characters. And we're just reading about so much world building. We're reading about so much torture that I said it before, I feel like a horrible person because I care, but I don't care. Like, it's not hurting my soul, and it's like, I don't know if something's wrong with me as a person where I'm not like that sad, but mate, it's just, I don't know how to explain it because I do feel bad for her, but it's just not hitting me emotionally like the way it should. And I think that's just because there's all this context we're missing out of. And it honestly is bugging me how dark this story is, which I didn't think would be the case. But I feel like the reason for that is I feel like it's just dark for the sake of being dark. And I'm like super nervous to say this because I know how loved this author's work is. But it's not working for me. It's really, really not working for me, to the point where I was talking to my friend this morning being like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, it's so sad. And I'm hoping that part 2 really helps me with this. And I get to the point where I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I also saw another comment somewhere, I think it was on TikTok again, where someone was like, when you reread it, you should like, obviously read it in order the first time, but then you should, once you've got the context and you've read it, you should really read the second part first and then go back. And I feel like I've already said this in this clip so far, but if we had had it in that correct order, where she doesn't have amnesia at the start of this book, I would have liked it a whole lot more, because we would have had context of the story. Because at the moment, I'm like, cool, I'm just confused. I'm confused as what's happened to her. I'm confused about this war. I just don't know what's happened. Like, I just don't know. And because it's been 280 pages of just absolute nothing, but also at the same time so much has happened, well so much torture has happened, and just some of the most horrific things, you should definitely check your trigger warnings, because it is like disturbing, some of the stuff that you read in this book. Not some of the stuff, lots of the stuff that you read in this book, that I just don't know. I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm just going to leave this update here, because as I said, I'll give you guys my thoughts once I've made some progress into part 2, because hopefully that's when the story will all come to fruition. It will all make sense to me. It will all come together and I'll be like, yes, this is a brilliant read. Because at this point, I'm not there. I am not there, and I am pissed that I'm not there. I'm so mad. I just wished I loved this book so far, but I'm not loving it. And I'm not loving it to the point where I was like, what's the point of reading it? What is the point of reading it? That's the point I've got to. So I don't know. I'm hoping part 2 pulls it together for me. But I am going to read the whole book, because it is a quick read. Like, when I pick this book up, I'm not struggling to read it. I'm enjoying it. But am I enjoying it, or is it just an easy read? But then again, it's not an easy read because I'm confused. So I'm just very conflicted about this book so far. But as I keep saying, hopefully I'll love it after part 2. But I'll keep you posted. Okay, so I wanted to do another update to let you all know how Alchemised by Senlin Yu is now going for me, because I'm up to page 518. So since yesterday, the progress I made into this book, let me show you guys. It doesn't look like a lot when you see it. So I managed to read just under 20 chapters, and I'm now over the halfway mark. So I wanted to tell you guys how I'm finding this book now. So what I've noticed is that the second part of this book is so much better than the first part. However, I've still got lots of issues with it. So I'm going to talk about the good things first. So the first thing that I'm finding I'm really enjoying about this book is we're actually getting more of the world. We're understanding what was happening to Helena before we saw the events of part 1. So I found that really interesting. And then we got to find out more about her as a person, and then what's going on around her. All of the characters, how Farron has played a role in this story, how them two met and everything like that. Well, not how them two met, how them two reunited and ended up working together in this war. And then we get to see more of them two interacting. And I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing of their relationship so far, and like how they don't trust one another at all. And then, well, more so how Helena doesn't trust him at all. Like that I'm really enjoying. And then I'm enjoying finding out more about this war. And I'm also finding that the world building is a lot better in the second part. and I'm finding it like a lot more easier to wrap my head around, and like I'm understanding alchemy and necromancy a whole lot better than I was in part one. Because in part one I was like, what the hell is going on? Whereas in part two it's like all starting to click. So I don't know if this book is one of them cases where I need to like just give it time and then everything will make sense as it goes along, and I just really need to be along for the ride, which is definitely an experience I've had with lots of fantasy series before. But I still just don't reckon the first part of this book was good. I just really still to this point wish we had have got what I'm reading now first and then seeing the first part second. Like I really wish that was just the way the story was told, because I really struggled with the first part, but I'm not struggling as much with this second part. And it got to the point where I actually wanted to continue reading it and like not stop, which is so great. But this book is so heavy, sorry. So we're now just going to hold it like this. So I'm finding that to be good. And I really do like Farron as a character, and I do like Helena as a character, but everything else I'm struggling with. So there's a lot that I'm still not loving. One of them elements is all of the side characters. There's like no one I like. There's literally no one I like at all. And I just don't know if because originally this book was fan fiction, that when we get this story, which is inspired by her fan fiction, obviously because of the same author, the character work doesn't feel so well done. Because my idea is like when it was a fan fiction, we knew these characters and we loved them. So the story I feel like would have worked a whole lot better for me. But when we're getting all these new characters, I feel like I've been thrown into this story and I'm just finding it really difficult to get attached to the characters. And it's like there's these horrible things that are happening, but I just am not, it's not hitting me emotionally the way I wanted it to. Because as I said in my earlier updates, I can notice it's horrific. I can think this is terrible and I feel so bad for them. But it's not like breaking my heart. So it's just not hitting me on the depth I wanted it to. And then I think it's also because I only like these two main characters and everyone else I'm like, get lost. Like I literally don't care about you. That when we're just stuck in Helena's brain for so far 500 pages, it's like I just wish there was another character perspective. And that normally is not something I complain about at all, but I really do wish there was another character perspective. Like my one wish in life with this book was if we got Farron's perspective, because I feel like that would have given us a more well-rounded story than I feel like I'm getting right now. Because it's like, it's interesting, but then I also feel like at the same time nothing is happening, because I've read 200 pages and I've learned things about this war. I've learned more about the relationship between Farron and Helena, but I just feel like it's very, very repetitive. So it's like we have certain scenes and it's just the same thing over and over and over again for hundreds of pages. Well, more like 100 pages. So these last 200 pages, I feel like nothing has happened. And it's just like, obviously things have happened, but I just wish that this story maybe had been cut down a bit, because I don't feel like what we're getting is really helping me with this story in certain aspects. Like, I feel like if we had have cut one scene or two scenes, it wouldn't have made a difference to the story. So it's just feeling very repetitive. Like, the first 200 pages was just about her getting tortured, and then there was world building. And then this next 200 pages is just about her healing and talking to Farron. And then obviously there's like smidges of war elements going on and smidges of world building, well, even more world building. But it's just, I don't know. Like, I really don't know why I'm not loving this book. Well, obviously the reasons I'm not loving it is all the reasons I'm explaining. But another thing I think has happened to me is because this book, well, the fan fiction has been so hyped, I must have like unconsciously put this book on a pedestal, and I went into this book expecting to be reading like this life-changing book, and I feel like I'm reading a really good book, but it's not life-changing. And I don't know if it's a really good book. It's a good book, but I do see lots of faults, and I don't think I'm hating it anywhere near as much as I was at the beginning, because I feel like there's more plot to the story now, whereas the first 200 pages I was just like, get me out of here. So I am happy to say I'm enjoying it more, but I'm still having issues with it, which is so frustrating. So I'm going to leave this update here because I've been talking for 6 minutes, and I would really like today to be able to get up to page 750 maybe. So if I could read like another 250 pages, that would be great. And then I can wrap this vlog up tomorrow when I read the rest. But obviously I've still got 500 pages left to go, so you will be getting more updates for me. But I feel like every 200 pages is actually like a really good time to give you guys all an update, because I've actually got thoughts. Whereas when I thought about doing it every 100 pages, it's like, because it's literally just the same thing over and over again, I'd have nothing to say. Whereas now I actually am starting to have things to say. So yeah, this book is improving, and I'll give you an update once I've made more progress into it, either today or tomorrow. Okay, so I'm here to do the next update of this reading vlog because I've made more progress into Alchemised by Senlin Yu. I'm now up to page 709, which is chapter 56, and I'm still not loving it. I'm really still not loving it. Ever since I've put this book down, which was a day and a half ago, I just have not one single part of me that wants to pick this book up again. But I will, because I want to finish it, obviously. But it's just like I'm really, really struggling with it. But there are elements I like about this book, but then there are also lots of elements that I really dislike. So let's just jump into the elements I like so far. So my favourite thing about this book is I really like how realistic this is as a story, because we're following this like horrific war, and what is happening to these characters feels very realistic. I've never been in a war, but like this is what I'm assuming it would actually be like, because sometimes I feel like with fantasy novels they like sugarcoat it and it's actually not that dark, whereas this book is extremely dark, it's extremely horrific, and just what is happening to these people is actually terrible. And it is like an extremely, I'm just going to say again, dark fantasy, but also feels very realistic to what it would actually feel like to be in a war. So I really appreciate that fact about it. And then going off the fact that this war feels very realistic, I also like how Helena is a healer and we're following her, which makes this book really interesting because we're following it from the perspective of someone who is seeing the effects of the war and having to help all the people who are either really injured, or she has to see everyone who is dying. So she's got like a really kind of depressing viewpoint of this war. And you can really see that because there's a certain point in this novel where all the side characters think they're going to win this war, whereas Helena is like, how on earth can we win this war when there's this amount of death? Like, we're still not winning this war when there's this amount of people dying. So I really like the fact that we got to see that and just see how like she really recognizes the fact that this war is not ending anytime soon. So I really appreciated that fact about her character. But then going to the side characters, I felt like all of the side characters are absolutely the worst in this book. Literally the only other character I like in this novel is Theron, and then everyone else I'm like, you can go jump. Like, honestly, they are so bad. Even like her friends, like Luke for example, he is just, I don't know, I don't really like him, and he's just like the savior of this world, and it's like, no, you're not saving anything. Like, you're just not. And he treats Helena so poorly. Like, all of the side characters treat her so poorly except for Theron. And then that's where another element of this book comes into play, which I don't like, but also at the same time do like. And that is the relationship between Theron and Helena. So because Helena really has no one in her life, when you look at what the side characters and how they treat her, when you see her interactions with Theron, it's very refreshing because he actually cares so deeply about her as a character and just wants to do the absolute best for her, and just he wants the absolute best for her. Whereas, but then I'm also like conflicted on whether or not I feel like that's a good thing. And then there's a part of me that's like, is this relationship only developing in the way it is because of the war? And if there wasn't this war, would these characters have even been together? And then I'm like very conflicted because one part of my brain is like, that's so romantic that in this environment they are choosing one another and they are just so there for each other. But then the other part of my brain is like, is it really romantic? Because literally they don't really have any other options because everyone else is just absolute garbage. So I don't know, but I really like how Theron has grown as a character, and we've got to learn more about him and his relationship with Helena. But I still just don't feel like I'm loving this book, and I just don't know what it is. I've said this in previous updates, but I went into this book expecting to be absolutely wrecked. And I'm like, I'm noticing things are horrific, but it's not affecting me emotionally the way I wanted it to. And I'm just trying to like make my way through it, and it's good, but it's not like the most heartbreaking read I've ever read. And I think it's because I just had too many expectations of this book and what it was going to be. So I really wish that this book hadn't been so hyped, and I hadn't have seen so many people say like, this is one of the best books I've ever read, it's one of the most life-changing books I've ever read. It's like the most depressing books I've ever read. They're just, you see videos of people and they're absolutely sobbing their eyes out, and I'm like, that's not me. That is really not me. I'm just reading it, and it's like, I feel like part of the fact of that is I've just kind of, this is really bad to say, but I feel like I've been desensitized to the horrific things that are happening, because literally from page 1 to where we're up now, it's just one depressing thing after the next. And I think because I'm not really feeling attached to Helena and Farron as characters, when things are happening to them, I'm like, this is sad, but it's not wrecking me, because I just don't have that emotional connection that I really needed to feel heartbroken by this novel. And then I'm also feeling desensitized to the violence and the horrific things that are happening, because it's like happening on every single page. So it's just feeling like this extremely depressing read, but it's not breaking my heart. So I feel like that again is conflicting itself, because I'm like, it's this heartbreaking read, but it's just not absolutely wrecking me in the way I wanted it to. So it's been okay so far. Like, it's definitely feeling like a 3-star read, but I don't know if it's going to change within the next section. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen, so hopefully, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to change. And I really don't want to finish this book, but then at the same time I do. So I'm going to just stop talking now. I'm going to edit this clip and then just sit down and read this book for the rest of the night. I don't know if you guys will get an update from me when I get up to part 3 of this book, or if I'll just wait until I've finished it. We'll just have to wait and see. I have finally done it. I have finally finished Alchemised by Senlin Yu, and I'm so happy that I finally finished this book, because it has taken me a while to get through. I think it's taken around a week and a half to read all of this, because I finished it on Sunday night, so it's been a day or two since I finished it. So I've really had time to contemplate my overall rating, and there's like a few last minor things that I would like to say about my experience with reading this book. But the first thing I wanted to say is, by reading this book, I don't think I've mentioned it in this video so far, is the fact that by reading this book, it means I've completed a book of my October TBR. And because I play One Piece Pick a Book, I draw these TBR cards, and the card that I drew was an unknown card, and it was a Goodreads generator. So basically what I did for that prompt was I just went through my Goodreads feed and then tried to find the first book that I owned that I could read. And this is the book that I had that first popped up. So yeah, I've completed a book of my October TBR, which is so great, because this is one of the first books I've completed. And I literally have not completed a book since starting this book, just because it's taken so much time and energy to get through it, because it is over 1,000 pages. So it's just stupidly long, like this book. And I'm just, as I said, I'm so thankful that I finally finished it. But overall, I'm going to rate it a 3 out of 5 stars, but part of me feels like I'm being generous with this rating, and it really should be like a 2 to a 2.5. But I feel like I'm rating it a 3-star because I want to love this book so unbelievably badly. And the fact that I'm trying to like gaslight myself into thinking that I actually do believe it's a 3 stars. Because there were some elements I liked about this book, but then I had more issues with it than things that I liked. And it just didn't work for me. So I'm so sad about it. Everything I've said previously in this video is still so true. My favorite thing about this book was definitely this plot of this story. Because the actual story of this novel was really interesting, because we've got this war that's happening between two sides, and it was really interesting seeing how the war was playing out and what was happening to these characters. But other than that, I kind of liked Helena as a character. I liked Farron as a character, who's also known as Kane. I've just referred to him as Farron this whole time throughout this video. But I've enjoyed them as characters, kind of, but I didn't love how possessive Kane was of her. Like, it just didn't, I don't know. I'm really struggling with this book because it's like, there's things that I like, but also the things that I like, I can see issues with them, which is making my experience not as good. And I'm just not loving it anywhere near as much as I wanted to. But I kind of like their relationship, but then as I said, he's very possessive. And I just don't know if I necessarily believed in this couple. And I really don't know. And then also, I feel like what would have made this story better for me was if we weren't just following Helena's perspective for the past 1,000 pages. Because the main thing I loved about this book was finding out about the war. And I feel like because she was a healer, she was more dealing with all of the dead soldiers and people with injuries. We didn't really get to see the war in the same way we would have if we had been following a character like Luke, for example, or Lila, for example, because they were more on the forefront of the war. And I just feel like it would have been interesting to get a more well-rounded view of what is actually happening. But I feel like that would have improved my enjoyment a whole lot better. And I also feel like another thing that has happened to me by the time I got to the end of the book was I really wasn't viewing this book as a fan fiction. Like, at the start of this vlog, because I've started editing it, I was saying how, like, with the characters, I was trying to figure out who they were from Harry Potter, because this is based off a fan fiction. So I was trying to figure out and piece together who was who, but then by the end of the book, I didn't really care. So I feel like the first 200 pages, I was kind of doing that, but then from part 2 onwards, I really just got super invested in the story and wanting to find out more. But I still didn't love it, and every time I put this book down, I just didn't want to pick it up again. But then when I started reading it, I managed to read so much at a time, and it really gripped my attention. So I don't know why that was. Like, maybe it's because I found what was happening interesting, but then because I'm not loving this book, my investment levels weren't that high, so I just didn't really feel the urge to pick it up and figure out what's happening next. So yeah, I've been struggling with this book. It's got a 3 stars. It was okay. Everything I've said in this video so far is true, and I think I'm going to stop talking about this book here because I feel like I've said everything I've needed to say, and if I've missed out something now, I've literally got the whole rest of the vlog where I've spoken about this book. So I really feel like I've spoken about everything that needed to be said on my views. I'm so glad I've read Alchemised. I've seen what the hype is about. I don't necessarily agree with the hype, and I'm super disappointed about that because I really did want to love this book and I just didn't, which is so disappointing. And it didn't make me cry. There was one scene in this book where I almost sobbed because there's this animal companion in here who I absolutely adored. And I just felt like that animal companion was one of the best characters in this book because literally every other character other than Helena and Farron I did not like. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this vlog up here now because I'm just rambling and I've said everything I needed to say. I hope you guys who have read this book have enjoyed it more than me, and if you end up picking it up, you again enjoy it more than me, because I really did want to love this book, but it just didn't work for me, which I'm still so gutted about. But I have now read Alchemised by Senlin Yu, and I'm so glad it's off my physical TBR. So yeah, I just wanted to say I hope to see you next time, and bye.